All right, so today we're going to be discussing how to connect a Django backend, as we can kind of see here, to a React frontend. So I have already created a new React project called Wine Frontend. I'm going to install a few things so we can make it style well and get some routes. So I'm going to install React Router DOM.
Okay, so it's a completely separate like project directory and everything from the original. Okay, that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the reason that we are separating our front end and back end like this is it's a matter of maintainability and scalability. So by making these two entirely separate, repos and making them separate projects, we limit how dependent they are on one another, which means that if we fix one somehow, the amount we have to change the other one is kind of minimized. We only need to change as much as we need to in order to get them to work, as opposed to having to change everything. All right, I'm also going to install React Bootstrap here. All right, and now we can open this up and get started. So I'm going to start with just, creating a React application the way we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. Thank you for the update. So in app.js, I'm going to, well, first out, I'm going to start our terminal, start our website up so we can make sure it's working. And while that's, wait for this to boot up so we can make sure that we're loading the page correctly, though I don't imagine why we wouldn't be. There we go. All right, now we can really get into it. So I'm going to get rid of the logo here. I'm going to import a couple things. I'm going to import browser router and route from React Router DOM. Get rid of all this stuff. I'm going to set up my browser router. Put a div in between them. And then set up some routes. So we're going to make one to be our home page. And we'll give it a component that we're going to call homepage. And then we'll make another one. And this one will be a wine to view the details of one wine. So /wine/wine ID. Component we're going to call wine page. And then we're going to need to import these, even though they don't exist yet. And we'll call this /pages/homepage.js. Import wine page from ./pages/winepage.js. Then I'm going to make a folder for pages. Inside that, I'm going to make homepage.js and winepage.js. and then get these set up. React, function homepage. Then we'll return, for now, just a div with a header that says homepage, just to make sure that we can actually make it work. Make sure we export it. All right, we've got a parsing error. What did I do wrong here? Oh, duh. Sorry, I got my class components, base components, and functional components mixed up. I did not put this in here. Where did this come from? That was weird. All right, do the same thing for our wine page. In fact, I can just copy all this and just change this to wine page. So there's our home page. And then if I go to /wines/1, here's our wine page. All right, so far so good. Our React application is working as expected. That's good to know. So before we kind of get into the new stuff, any questions? Or it's not even really new stuff. These are all things we've done before. We just need to kind of put everything we've learned together. But either way, any questions? Okay. So in that case, I'm going to start making some methods to connect my front end to my back end. So inside my SRC folder, I'm going to make an API folder. I'm going to make a new file here called wineapi.js. So first, I'm going to make a function to fetch a wine. So fetch wine by ID. That takes in a wine ID as an argument. And we're going to return, we're going to fetch to, in this case, Noah Kilo Platoon wine API.herokuapp.com. So one thing to keep in mind, so we're going to be doing a fetch request. So normally, we should be able to do something like this, right? So, and that should work just fine, yeah? But does anyone, I don't know if anyone's run into this problem yet. What might be the problem if we try to fetch from a normal Heroku app? Has anyone heard of a CORS error before?
Yeah.
Who just said that?
That was Nisha.
Yeah, so Kanisha, what is CORS?
I just kind of vaguely remember talking about it during a web security workshop. I don't really totally understand what it is.
All right, that's fine. But it is has to do with web security, you're right. So CORS, C-O-R-S, stands for Cross-Origin Resource Sharing. And it's essentially the mechanism that restricts what websites can contact your website, essentially. So a Django app, by default, won't allow a request from an unvetted resource, like our React app in this case, to make a successful request. It'll just be stopped right away. And I believe in my case, I think this application is already set up to accept CORS requests. But just in case it isn't, like for most of them, you'll have to do something like this. There's a website called corsanywhere.herokuapp.com. And this essentially is kind of a way that allows you to bypass the CORS thing when it comes to Heroku apps. So it is a little unreliable. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it's pretty simple to use. So you just copy this, and you would essentially set it up like that. http://corsanywhere.herokuapp.com/ and then the name of your Heroku app in front of that.
I'm just still trying to figure out why we need that, or maybe I set my thing up incorrectly. Does this prevent, like, 'cause I was able to add data to using Postman to the Heroku app, and I could see the data and everything. So how is that different than us trying to basically fetch it in any other method?
Yeah. I think Postman operates by different rules than a separate web application does. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what allows Postman to bypass this, but a fetch request from a React application will be blocked in a way that Postman isn't.
Okay, perhaps it's something to do with what's in the headers and the request or something. So okay.
Also, I forgot to make this an asynchronous function. So you could say, let response equal await. Then let wine equal await response.json. Then we return wine. And then I'm going to just do one for fetching all the wines. I'm going to operate by the same principle. So let response equal await fetch. It's going to copy this up to this up to this point. And then we'll let wines equal await response.json, return wines.
Async as well, line 7.
Thank you. And then I'm going to export these methods. So this is all stuff that we've done last week, right? I wonder why that one's, I'm not going to worry about it. So now we're going to change our homepage here so that we should be able to get all of the wines and store them in state. So we're going to get use state here. I'm going to say const wines set wines equals use state. It's going to be an empty array by default. And then I'm actually going to need use effect as well. And I'm also going to import wine API from /API/wineAPI.js. And I'm going to use the use effect hook in order to essentially, when the page loads, I want it to fetch all of my wines. So I'm going to set wines to wine API dot fetch wines. And in order to keep it from triggering a re-render, I'm going to add wines here as an argument. I believe that's how that works. Fetch wine by ID is not defined. Uh-oh.
I think when you had the, going to the other part, when you had wines inside of the list operator at the end of your fetch, so just where we're editing, that's going to change the wines list anytime the wine is like somehow updated. But I think if you want to do it just once, it should be just a blank list on line 9.
All right, we'll try that, but I still need to figure out why my API is broken here. It says fetch wine by ID is not defined. Did I misspell it here?
You have a plural S.
The D is lowercase on the ID.
Nope, so it is. Good catch. All right, so for now, I'm just going to check my home page, see if we break anything. All right, it's not broken. Let's take a look at state using our inspector. Here's home page. All right, so it hasn't been set, unfortunately, but it's not broken either. So let's see here, we're not getting any errors. So I'm not sure if my fetch request isn't working or what. I'm going to try something real quick. I'm going to try fetching using the method here just in the console and see what comes up. So you have a promise here. So I'm going to set up a .then, response.json. So it looks like it is just being very, very slow. And that's something that happens with cores anywhere, is that it does slow things down considerably sometimes. It says the promise status is resolved. Oh, here's wines now. All right, so we are able to fetch. Question is, why isn't it updating my state?
Is the free version of Heroku that we're using, do they make that slow already?
I'm not sure if they do.
Okay.
I'm going to just console.log here to make sure things are happening. All right, so my use effect is triggering. And wine API should work. Yes?
I was just thinking it's creating it because you did have a little error that's saying it was basically defined but never used. But at this point, we're still not technically using it either, unless you did a console.log console.log wines after the set wines.
Yeah, we could try that. So,
But yeah, when I was looking at it, overall, it's not going to necessarily change whether or not the state's technically set. But
yeah, we would need a.
Can you go back to
actually,
your
if you go, oh, sorry.
Yes.
With the console log, it did actually return the empty list. So it did do the happening. I went to the API, and then it came back with a blank list when we had the console log wines. So that means there's an issue with the set wines aspect of things.
If you call your API and then try to set the state after the return, would that fix it? Could it be like an async issue?
Yeah, I think the use effect might. Does it need to be async?
Oh, perhaps it does. That would make sense, wouldn't it? Well, can you make use effect be async? I'm not sure if you
Yeah,
can.
you declare the well, the way you need to normally you like define your async function inside your effect and call that separately.
Okay, let's try that. So I could say, you know, let's call this update wine list. Set wines, wine API dot fetch wines. And then here we just call on update wine list. Oh, let's move that up. Now what did I do? No, wait. There we go. Let's see if that changes anything. Still not updating. Let's make sure that the function fetch wines function is being called, though I'm sure it is. So that part works. So if I go down here, console.log wines after it's been fetched. All right, there it is. Oops. So that part works.
No, is it not returning a promise? And then so do you not want to do dot then and then set the state using the return of then?
Oh, so something like set wines.
Yep.
I'm not returning anything here. That's one thing, but
I meant so you do wine API dot fetch wines, open close parentheses, then you do dot then, and then you create a dot then, I guess, response arrow function with response as the input, and then
set wines with response.
Yes.
Yeah, let's try that.
Promise, right?
There we go. Awesome. Thank you.
Nice job, Jason.
I'm used to doing this as a class-based component, and so when I'm doing it as a functional component, I'm always like, okay, how did I do this again? But all right. So we've managed to update our state using, so we did wine API, fetch wines, then we did a dot then afterwards where we set wines as the response. and called this function inside our useEffect hook. All right, so any questions on how we did that? Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to start to do things. So I'm going to make a new, I'm going to make a component. So I'm going to make a component folder. Inside that component folder, I make another folder called wine list. And I'm going to make a component called winelist.js. And this is going to be the thing that actually renders all of our wines. Got a little mixed up there. All right, and so what we're going to be doing is in our home page, I'm going to import wine list from /components/winelist/winelist.js. And in here, I'm going to set a wine list. And we're going to set wines equal to this, nope, just wines. So now I've got a wine list thing here, and wines has been passed down as a prop. So let's see here. What do you think is the best way to render a list of wines based on the data looking like this? Just in terms of HTML, what's a good design way of doing that?
If you're not worried about, you basically do an ordered list or an unordered list, but unless you're trying to put precedence on like this wine is number 1, this wine is number 2, based on how it comes out of the database, I would go with the unordered list.
Yeah, so we can do an unordered list.
Maybe a table if you're interested in listing the attributes.
Yeah, a table might also be good. You know what? There's another library we can also use here. So I'm going to use one. So I'm going to npm install something new. I'm going to npm install React Bootstrap table, which is its own separate library from React Bootstrap. And it just gives us some nice formatting on its own, so we don't really need to worry about it ourselves. And it really makes kind of, we don't need to do a dot map ourselves or anything like that. It's really useful. So up here, I'm going to import Bootstrap table and table header column from React Bootstrap table. And inside of here, I'm going to create a Bootstrap table. And I'm going to set data equal to props.wines. And then I'm going to create some table header columns. And we're going to set this one to isKey, which sets up the key for us super easily. We're going to say data field equals ID. And set up ID here. And we'll create another table header column. And the data field for this one is going to be the, how did I call it? Wine name. Gonna kind of copy this just so we can save some time. So we're gonna have here the varietal. And here we'll have the price. And I'll just put the region in as well. I'm not going to worry about the vintage. So now if I look at this again, okay, what happened? All right, we have next props.data.slice is not a function. Bootstrap table component will receive props. All right. So something's wrong with Bootstrap. Something happened wrong with how I use Bootstrap table, it looks like.
Yeah, I think Bootstrap table, there's something in that library.
Yeah. I'm noticing that it's talking about the component will receive props thing. So I wonder if it only works with class-based components. I'm going to try turning this into a class-based component. See if that fixes it. Extends component. Looked like it started to work for a moment and then broke. Let's see here. All right, so next props data.slice. All right, so yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here with Bootstrap table. Looks like it's not going to work for us this time, so I'm going to not use that here. That's a shame because it's really simplifies things, but by the looks of it, it doesn't want to really do that. So instead, I'm going to write a function to render all wines. And we'll just do an unordered list for now because that's just easier at this point, and I have no idea what's going on with the Bootstrap table stuff. Sorry to waste your time with that. Didn't realize that it would break so bad. So instead, I'm going to return this .props.wines.map. We'll call it, have it take in wine and index as arguments there. Inside here, we'll return a list item where the key is going to equal index. And in here, we're just going to put wine.wine name for now. And then in here, I'm going to say this.render all wines. Let's put that inside a UL before I forget. Also put that in brackets because you need to. That was weird.
And then is there going to be any functionality? I mean, it should display, hopefully, but as far as them clicking on it to go to that specific detail?
Not yet.
Or, okay.
I just wanted to make sure that it's working. All right. This .props.wines is not a .map is not a function.
I think it may be because wines is an object containing an array of wines instead of just an array, which may have been the issue with the Bootstrap table as well.
Oh. You know what? I think you're right.
Yeah, it's
So
like
this-
wines.wines.
Whoops. All right.
That happened to me many times, so
Nope, that's undefined, it says. All right, I'm gonna console.log this.props .wines and see what comes up. So it looks like wines is an array, or it's an object with an array in it. All right, so I think I need to set up some conditional stuff here if this.props.props.wines. I'm going to console.log this.props.props.wines again, just to make sure. Yeah, okay, I can see what happened now. All right. So if this.props.wines. Ugh. This is something to avoid in your own data handling. Just keep that in mind. Put that back as .wines. There we go. Okay. So we're able to render them to the page. They don't really do anything yet. They're just names, but they are there now. That's the important thing at this point. All right. Sorry again for the confusion. What questions do you have about what we did here? Does everyone see where I went wrong with all this? I want to make sure that you all know to avoid this when you're doing this on your own.
No, I'm not sure I understand why you needed to do wines twice.
Yeah. So I didn't understand myself at first. It's the way that my Django backend is sending the data. Instead of sending an array over, it's sending an object with a key called wines, and that key points to an array. So in order to access this array, I need to access this object's wines key first. So I thought this.props.wines was an array, but really it was an object with an array inside of it.
Okay.
So I could probably fix things as well by doing something like return wines.wines. I wonder if that would change anything. So I'm going to try something real quick.
Well, at this point, it might. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say unless you change it, it's elsewhere.
I'll have to make sure that I'm going to try getting rid of that and this. And see if that, okay, it's not broken. And let's see here. I think I might be able to get rid of the conditional function and conditional without if I fix that as well. There we go. Okay. So it's important to know how your data is formatted when you're working with it. Pay close attention to that. So I changed my wine API function here so that instead of returning an object, it returns an array. So that's why I changed this to return wines.wines. That way, my wine list component only has to deal with this.props.wines instead of this.props.wines.wines. All right. Cool. All right. So we've got this working more or less. So let's update our wine page here so that we can see all the details of a single wine. So it's going to work very similarly to my home page. I'm going to get use state and use effect. I'm going to say const wine and set wine. I'm going to set that equal to use state with an empty object as the default argument. I also need to import my wine API function. And just like last time, I'm going to create an asynchronous function. Let's call this, update wine. Oh, we also need to make sure this accepts props. All right, and I'm going to say, first we're going to get our ID. So const ID equals props dot match dot params dot wine ID. So that'll get our wine ID from our URL. And then I'm going to say wine API dot fetch wine by ID dot then we'll call this response set wine with response. Then I'm going to call use effect. And when I call use effect, I'm just going to call update wine and also give it an empty array here, empty object here. All right, well, let's see. We already have a error. Let's see what happens if I go to /wine/1. No, okay, maybe those are just basic warnings. Let's see what the console says. Nope. Okay. Use effect
Should be
received a
a
final
list.
argument that, oh, it has to be an array. That's why. This needs to be an array in order for use effect to work correctly. And it says right here, reactive hooked use effect has a missing dependency update wine. Either include it or remove the dependency array.
Yeah, I've dealt with that quite a bit over the last week. Now, you could. It's your. Is it the linter that's complaining?
No, this is React that's complaining.
The wine one. You're not looking at this one yet, because the next one, the ESLint disable next line, is the only way you're going to get rid of the error on line 15.
Yeah. Well, it says right here that it's just a warning at this point, so I'm not going to be too thing about it. But I have another problem. Looks like my fetch request went to Cores Anywhere Heroku app Lima Platoon wine API herokuapp.com/wine/undefined. So something went wrong there. So I'm going to want to make sure that, all right, wine page right here. If I do console.log props, figure out why props.match.params.wine ID didn't work. So here's props.match, params, wine ID, there it is. Oh, wide ID. Uh-oh. Yep. There we go. That's the problem. All right, so now we don't have any errors. And if I check my wine page component here, yep, I've got it all in state now. So now I should be able to render the wine. Never a dull moment when you're working with React. So I'm going to just update this. I'm going to say, yeah. So let's just say, show wine.wine name. And then we'll have a header here. that says price. Have a p tag to show wine.price. Just keep doing this for a bit. So varietal. Wine.varietal. I have a vintage. Wine.vintage. And finally, I've got a region for mine. Wine.region. There we go. Go to wines 2. There it is. All right, what questions do you have about what we've done so far? All right. In that case, let's take a 13-minute break. Be back here at 10:45, and we will continue with the next part of this.